So a while back, Cricket with Ash, who is one of the better, newer analysts coming through at the moment, did a breakdown of all the sort of major leg spinners in the IPL. It's really interesting. And I think this is really where analysis of players will go. You know, a leg spinner is not a leg spinner is not a leg spinner. Not everyone who bowls leg spin always bowls leg spin anymore. Not everyone who bowls finger spin always bowls finger spin anymore. And there are bowlers that are even harder to classify than that. So having a proper breakdown of exactly what these bowlers do is so much more important. But most importantly for right now, what his work has allowed me to do is just break down these leg spinners for you a little bit more to give you some information about them. And we're doing this because it's leg spin, and leg spin's important.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
Let's start with Ravi Bishnoi, who was under-bowled last year, but this year it hasn't gone quite as well. Perhaps part of the reason he was kept back in the previous season was he's not quite on top of what he's doing at the moment. But he still obviously has a lot of skills. Most of that skill is his wrong end, which he delivers almost 50% of the time when he's bowling to right-handers, and also 4 out of 5 times when he's bowling to lefties. He's actually more of a wrong end bowler than a leg spin bowler. That's not very common. It is becoming more common in T20 cricket, but traditionally, if you ever saw a wrong and only bowler, they were either a left arm bowler or a club bowler. One other thing worth noting is that he's much wider on the crease than some of the other bowlers. Most leg spinners don't do that. And that's the sort of thing that would probably bother older leg spinners, because the idea was always to get as close to the stumps as possible. Although I do think times have changed, and I think his success so far has made more sense. That said, I think he can actually use the crease a lot better, especially with his wrong end. Sometimes bowling really wide of the crease and sometimes coming a lot closer to the stump. But it's important to note that Ravi Bishnoi just hasn't really worked out this year. Of all the major leg spinners, he has struggled the most. He has the worst economy and average. Of course, Rahul Tewatia isn't on this list. In fact, he's almost not a leg spinner anymore. From his 30 balls, he's gone for 65 runs without a wicket so far. So there's really only a few high usage leg spinners in the league. But Bishnoi is better than just being an IPL leg spinner. He actually played for India in this calendar year, and last year he took his wickets at 18 while going an economy of 6.5 runs and over. So this is quite a drop. And while we're dropping, let's drop down here to Hasanaranga. I wasn't sure how he would go this year. It was more the amount of money that he went for that bothered me a little bit. He was untested, and so far it's been really interesting. For instance, with the bat, which is part of the reason he got the big payday, he hasn't really made a run yet at all. But his bowling just on its own is really interesting as well, because we have seen him take a lot of wickets, but he can't stop people from scoring. Usually when I see a record like this, I worry a little bit that he may not be effective going forward, but I haven't felt that way with Hasanaranga specifically. Another thing I find interesting about Hasanaranga's bowling is how similar he is with his wrong end record to right-handers or left-handers. Because in truth, this ball is by far his best from the limited data samples that Cricket with Ash had to work with. And you can see just how potent his wrong end can be. It's quite an old-fashioned one, slower than his normal ball. Many of the leggies you'll see on this list actually trying to sky their googly by bowling it a lot quicker. But this also shows that he's quite an accurate bowler, and also he has a very low release. And when you're accurate and you have a low release, it means you hit the stumps a lot, especially his wrong end. It means there are very few wasted wrong ends when he bowls. He's also landing his best deliveries between 5 and 6 meters a lot more than standard bowlers. That's not a full length. And for some spinners, there would be a little bit of bounce there. But because he has that low release point, he doesn't actually have to worry about that. So many of his balls are hitting the stumps, which is just a huge advantage to him. Now, you're going to see that there's a couple of middle leggies here. And let's start with Mirza first. He's had an average career so far. Last year, he only got 3 games and did struggle in those. The years before that, he was mostly a low economy bowler. Career-wise, his average is just over 30 and his economy just under 8. It's solid, which is not really what you think of when you think of leg spin in T20 cricket. But you can see straight away why he struggles to be consistently good. He cannot land a length consistently. He over and under pitches far more than normal leg spinners. This doesn't allow him to keep pressure on batters, which is a shame because we know he actually has skill and he can spin the ball quite a bit. We also know that he's tactical with his wrong end, using it a lot more against left-handers than right-handers. It's actually interesting how similar the percentages are kind of in the other direction from each other. He backs his leg spinners against the right-handers, but when against the southpaws, he's almost an offie with an occasional deuce-throw. I think you're going to see a lot more leg spinners who try this method. But another thing worth noting with him, and it shows the potential that he has, even if he's not particularly a younger player, is that he spins both of his deliveries quite a lot. In fact, he spins them almost the exact same amount, just in 2 different directions. That means there's a big difference between where his wrong end's going to end up and his leg spin is going to end up. The gap that he is creating is far bigger than other people. He's just really got to nail the lengths better. Rahul Chahar is obviously a better bowler than Mirza and has been consistently all the way through his career. However, I don't think he's a very sexy leg spinner, which is some of the reasons I feel sometimes he's actually underrated. In some ways, he almost feels more like a finger spinner, except for the fact that, hit the ball spins away. He's even got all those sorts of tricks that you see from finger spinners more often, the way he comes up to the crease. But he's a career 25 average, 7.5 economy bowler. That's really good numbers. But there are some other things that mark him out as being a weird T20 leg spinner. Like, he doesn't really like to use his wrong and all that much. He really doesn't use it much against right-handers at all. And obviously, he does up it a little bit when he's going against the lefties. But if you have a look at Cricket with Ash's take on this, you'll actually see why. His leg spinner is actually just a really good ball. And he also has a way of bowling both of his deliveries, the wrong and the leg spinner, at the back of his hand, which is something that some T20 bowlers are doing. Rashid Khan can do this, for instance. So even though his wrong end isn't great, the fact that he has it and his leg break looks like it makes his leg spinner much more dangerous. But I think all of this plays into the fact that he looks like a less skilled bowler than other players. But this year, and in fact most years, he's at the end where the good leg spinners are. Even if he never quite cracks the elite end, it shows you just what a good bowler he is consistently. But if we are using Cricket Australia's word elite, there is no more elite. The elitist of the elite is always Rashid Khan. Teams now actively try not to be dismissed by him. And this is the first year they've ever really been successful in that. Until now, he's taken his wickets at around 20, while going at not much more than a run a ball. This year, that has ballooned to 7.09. I mean, I say ballooned, he's still the most economical leg spinner, and the third most economical spinner altogether after Hasanaranga and Krunal Pandya this season. There's a lot to like about Rashid Khan's bowling that doesn't even always come across in the raw numbers. Like, of this lot of leg spinners, it's really just him and Hasanaranga who can bowl in the power play. But he's also an incredible bowler at the deaths when you need him. In fact, that's where Afghanistan use him the majority of the time. And being a leggy who can bowl whenever needed is a huge advantage. It allows you to pick another leg spinner if you have them in your team. And it also means that if you're struggling in the power play, you can throw him up there. And if one of your bowlers is having a bad day, you can use him at the death. That kind of flexibility is not normal for a leg spinner. Another thing worth looking at is just how similar he bowls the wrong end to either right or left-handed batter. And that is because he deceives the batters at such a high level that his wrong end is always important. He's not bowling wrong ends to lefties to spin the ball away because he doesn't need to. They can't line him up anyway because they don't know which way he's going to be turning the ball. That, with his accuracy and his pace, is basically why he's Rashid Khan. One thing that is noticing is he has the biggest drop in his leg spinner pace compared to his wrong end speed. And I know that he has worked pretty hard to try and stop that from happening. That is usually what gives away a wrong end if you can't pick the direction the ball is spinning, and he makes that hard with the seam, or if you can't pick it from the wrist position, which it seems almost no one can. You would think a drop like this so dramatically would affect him. For whatever reason, it doesn't. Another thing I love about Rashid Khan is he's basically got his own length, something he shares with someone like Hasanaranga. They're bowling quicker and shorter, and regularly landing the ball between 6 and 8 meters, meaning it's very hard to get at. Also with his wrong end specifically, when he lands it so short, it can kind of come back and cut you in half. But however, this year, he's been cutting fewer batters in half. It's Yuzvendra Chahal who has been the best leg spinner, at least to this point in the year. Although it does say something that even though he's averaging 12.6, his economy rate is still the same as Rashid Khan. But let's just get back to the fact that Chahal's bowling average is 12.6. 12.6. That is incredible. Before the season, I was pretty clear how underpaid I thought Chahal was. When I had a look at the teams before the auction, I thought this is a guy that will have to go for 10 crore. He did not. In fact, his numbers over the last few years have been absolutely incredible, and I saw no reason for them to drop off this season. I mean, his numbers at the moment are 12.6. I actually expect them to drop off just because averaging 12.6 for an entire year is remarkable. Let's hope he does, though. But I feel like a lot of teams slept on him, and it was kind of obvious that another good year was coming. That he's been even better is remarkable, but at the very least, you would have expected him to average around 20 with an economy of around 7.2. It's weird that no one felt that way. The other thing I really like about Chahal is that of all the leggies, he is really the most conventional. Perhaps far more like England's Matt Parkinson than any of the other leg spinners we've talked about today. He just doesn't miss his length. He mixes up his pace and his crease position, and he turns his leg spinner a good amount. He bowls fuller than most leggies as well, a much more traditional leg spin length. Almost half of his balls are between 3 and 5 meters. And perhaps because he does pitch the ball up a lot more, he doesn't worry about his wrong end as much as other bowlers. He's starting to bowl it more over the last couple of years, but no other leg spinner on this list bowls fewer googlies than he does. But of the leg spinners on this list, he's certainly at the end who doesn't bowl too many wrong-uns. And the interesting thing about that is he's actually really good at bowling them. But perhaps because he doesn't spin it that much, he's just less interested in bowling it. And he's having so much success with his leg spinner, he doesn't need to. I think it's clear that this year, and probably last year, he's bowling the wrong end more. But even so, if you look at him, he's bowling in the mid 80 km/h zone, spins the ball a lot, doesn't overuse the wrong end, delivers really full, and in a world of mystery and shorter length, but he's still a really normal leg spinner, not a modern T20 bowler. I mean, he bowls in the mid 80 km zone, he spins the ball a lot, he doesn't overuse the wrong end, he mixes up his speed and his place on the crease, he delivers incredibly full, and just in that world of mystery and shorter lengths, he's the old school leggy. And so far this year, he's also the best one. So remember, go follow Cricket with Ash, he does heaps of really cool stuff like this. Also subscribe to this here YouTube, and be nice to your family and friends.